Welcome back to ESBR Boxing's YouTube channel. Delighted as always to be joined by Niall. This is a reaction video to the news that Dave Allen will face Arslanbek Makhmudov on the 11th of October in Sheffield. Fight not many people saw coming. Obviously, we saw Dave Allen get that fantastic win over Johnny Fisher in their rematch a couple of months ago now. Makhmudov, we've seen him fight on these big Riyadh season cards. Some of those fights have gone well for him, some of them very haven't done. But yeah, here's the fight we're being dealt with, and it's probably one of the biggest fights we're going to see in the UK for the remainder of the year. Now, give us your instant reaction to this one, please.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head and saying not a lot of people expected this one to happen. Dave Allen coming off the big win against Johnny Fisher, and yeah, Makhmudov. It's a strange one because the losses he's had a couple of big losses, and he's looked horrendous in them. To be honest with you, he was the favourite against Cabiel. I know the Cabiel loss isn't the biggest disgrace in the world, from what Cabiel has done, but. He lost against Vianello then and looked bad. It's weird. It's been a weird kind of last few fights for Makhmudov, but I just think he might still have a bit too much for Dave Allen. The losses that he's had are the better fighters than Dave Allen. Although it's one of those that Allen will be really looking at this thinking it is winnable. With how bad he did look against Cabiel and Vianello, he's very stiff, very one-dimensional. And of course, he doesn't like it to the body, as we've seen. So it's all about if Allen can get through the first two or three rounds here, I think he'd favour himself big time. But that's a big if. Allen is very hittable, and Makhmudov is a huge, huge puncher. So I think you're muted there.
Apologies. I'll start again.
Yeah.
Makhmudov came in at 265 pounds for his last fight. A very large, intimidating man. I think 6'5", 6'6". Absolute giant of a man. Let me ask you now, do you think that some people have gone a bit over the top on Dave Allen in that win? If you consider maybe what Johnny Fisher's actual level is, the fact that Dave Allen still really has been very inactive the last 4 or 5 years, really. We've seen Dave Allen's level kind of over and over again in the sport. Do you think some people are kind of overreacting to that win over Johnny Fisher?
I think so. I think it is fair to say that they probably are. I think credit to him, it was a big win. He very arguably, he probably beat Johnny Fisher twice, if we're being honest. But, you know, I think it is more of a case of Johnny Fisher's level wasn't as kind of expected. I think it was a bit of a case of people getting carried away with Johnny Fisher as well before the Dave Allen fight. And Dave Allen, yeah, workmanlike performances and kind of proved that Johnny Fisher was only at a certain level. And as you said, Allen, you can't ignore, has been kind of outside of that, has been inactive over the past few years, has put in really underwhelming performances against the likes of Fraser Clark. You know, it's just credit to him. It was a big win, but I do think people need to kind of remember the level that he's at. He hasn't even really proved that. He hasn't proved that he's a bit more than domestic level. If we're being honest.
Yeah, and I've just got a couple more questions for you now. And based on what you've said, is this a good idea? Is this a good idea? Because boxing, it's a serious game, it's a serious sport. And I just think there's an uptake in levels here. And I understand this, maybe Dave Allen's being paid well for this fight, and if he wins this fight, he could maybe go on to be a bigger fight. I just can't help but think that he was linked with fighting for the British title against Jamie TKV, which I think was maybe just maybe a 50-50 fight, you could say. Um, do you think kind of from a Dave Allen's team perspective, this is a good idea, or should you just be going for someone who is British title level, whether they're British or not, but that sort of level, having another fight, seeing if they can win that one, and then kind of seeing if they can get a bigger fight after that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I remember chatting to like people on the channel after that Johnny Fisher win, and we were talking about what we want next for Dave Allen. And the British title would have been the kind of the best option, in terms of a kind of feel good story, going after a British title, finally winning a Lonsdale belt. Well, if he did, not a hugely massive risk of a fight, and it would have been a great ending to a career where he's overachieved. To be honest with you, he wouldn't have taken as much damage as I think he's going to take in this fight. So yeah, he seems like a nice guy, Dave Allen. So that's what people wanted, the kind of romantic side of him going for a British title. I this was the first thing that came to my head when this fight was announced. Allen and Makhmudov, was that it's a bad idea. I know, like as you say, he's gonna get paid well for it, but he's earned enough money, as I say, he's overachieved. He's earned more money than his ability probably should have earned him, which credit to him, it's been fantastic. Seems like such a nice fella, but yeah, I'd worry in terms of health wise, the damage that he could take in this fight. I do think it's a bad idea. I really would have loved to see him fight Jamie TKV for the British title, or somebody on that level. Really, he's never going to be above British level, if we're being honest with you. So, have maybe one more fight for the British title would have been the ideal one for Dave Allen fans, and people that are worried for his physical health.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, look, it's not too long ago, some people were saying Dave Allen was sounded punch drunk, was kind of slurring his words. So I just think Makhmudov, what say what you like about him, he's a massive puncher. Does he really need to be taking punches from Makhmudov, who's operated at a higher level um than he has in recent years? All right, Noel, finish off as always. Give us your what's going to happen here. Can Dave Allen pull this off? Because Makhmudov, dangerous fighter, but a beatable fighter as well. Can Dave Allen do this?
Yeah, as I said, it's such a weird one. Like Makhmudov, I think Makhmudov will win, and I think it will be early. I think it'll be in the first two rounds. I just think Dave Allen is way too stationary, way too one-dimensional, and he is going to get caught with big punches, and he's going to get put out early. Makhmudov, as bad as he's looked, as I said, they're against better fighters than Dave Allen that he's lost to, Cabiel and Vianello, and he's beaten better fighters than Dave Allen's beat. He's beaten Carlos Takam, who, Dave Allen doesn't have a win at that level on his resume. So I do think Makhmudov will win early, but it's weird. If Dave Allen was to pull this off, it wouldn't be the biggest shock I've ever seen. When he's looked bad, when it's went wrong for Makhmudov, it's really went wrong. He's looked horrendous. And I said it's all about getting past those first two or three rounds, and then it's Dave Allen. Dave Allen will just grow in confidence from there, especially if he starts working the body early and we start seeing Makhmudov blowing hard. It could be an interesting one, but I just don't think. I think he's too stationary, he's too one-dimensional, he's too easily hit to get past those first two or three rounds. And yeah, I can see Makhmudov blasting him out there early. Well, I say blasting out, maybe it might be a bit of a TKO type of thing, or maybe his corner might pull him out. But yeah, I think Makhmudov inside two rounds for me here. As I say, I wouldn't be massively surprised if Dave Allen done it, but yeah, this is just a step too far for me.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I don't think Jamie Moore and Nigel Travers are going to kind of stand there and watch Dave Allen take too much punishment here. And Dave Allen, if he loses, I think he can come back as well because he's kind of the underdog here, but he's got a chance. I think that's one thing we can agree on. He's got a chance. All right, leave it there. No, October the 11th in Sheffield. Dave Allen versus Arslanbek, Makhmudov. We will see what happens. And I'll thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Cheers, take care.